A very good evening to you. It's a Friday, the 2nd of August 2024, and this is Spectrum Xtra coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is also broadcasting from its website, www.radio1fm90.com. On that website, there's an icon with the word Listen Live. We are also coming to you live on the different radio listening apps, which can be obtained from the Google Store of your smartphone. You download any TuneIn, Afro Mobile, your TV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Africa. Look for Radio 1 FM 90, and as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us. There's also another option, that's via your TV set. If you have a DSTV connection, look for audio channel 897. Today, I have a panel of 4. Let me introduce them. The Honorable Elias Lukwago, the Lord Mayor of Kampala Capital City, leader of the Katonga-based FDC faction. Welcome to this edition of Spectrum Xtra, your Lordship, Elias Lukwago.
Good evening, listeners. Wouldn't it be enough to introduce me as the president of FDC?
The president of the FDC faction based at Katonga Road here in Kampala. Thank you very much for joining us, your Lordship, Elias Lukwago. Also in studio, Dr. Tweheyo, who is also joining us, Dr. James Tweheyo. He's a member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM, where he represents workers, but he's also a senior officer in the Office of the President. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. James Tweheyo.
You're welcome. Good evening to you as listening and those viewing. I'm happy to be around with these big brains to share.
Also joining us in studio, Ms. Perry Aritua, Executive Director at Women Democracy Network, Uganda chapter. She's a seasoned election observer. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Kenneth. Good evening, listeners and viewers, and also my fellow panelists.
The fourth panelist, Counsel Thomas Gawaya Tegule. He is an advocate of the High Court of Uganda and other subordinate courts, veteran journalist, who is also columnist with the Daily Monitor newspaper. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Ken. I'm happy to be here. Also happy to... I hadn't seen the Lord Mayor in a long while. I'm happy to see him back on his feet, and I would like to say welcome back from the theater. And I pray that God gives you grace to navigate the recovery period.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. One of our regular panelists, the Honorable Simon Mulongo, lost his dear mother, and we do commiserate with him. Is back in the constituency in that side of our country, Bugolo East, and we do hope that the Lord will strengthen him and the family to go through this period. Well, we have two main issues that we're going to look at. We are going to look at the strikes that are continuing to take place in our country. We know there has been that March to Parliament, which was a protest in regard to the issues around corruption in Parliament and the country generally. This week, the efforts were geared towards rescuing those who had been detained, over 100 youth, and many of them were bailed out after being charged in court. Some people have also attacked the judiciary, saying they have not been fair, and they allowed some funny charges to be placed on these youth. And from what we have heard, these protests are likely to resume next week. That's one thing there. The other thing, we know the traders have been on strike, but they have been able to call it off after getting a promise that will be meeting President Yoweri Museveni. Their issues relate to IFRIS, that system that the URA wants to implement or is already implementing, but also other outstanding issues in the area of trade. And then that aside, today, we saw nurses actually camping at the Ministry of Health, telling them to deploy them. The nurses are at home. They want to be deployed, but they can't be deployed. And experts in that field actually say if this goes on, we are likely to have a crisis in the health sector. So we'll be looking at these issues. One newspaper just to give us a headline that Uganda is a country of strikes. Are we moving in that direction? And what can we do to be able to resolve some of these fault lines that keep emerging? Then we have an Auditor General's report which talks about how political parties have been using funds that are allocated to them. Now, political parties annually receive 44.9 billion shillings, which are shared out according to the numeric strength. The NRM, being the majority in Parliament, gets 75.7%, which is about 34.1 billion shillings. The main opposition now, NUP, gets 12.7%, which is around 5.7 billion shillings. The list the party that gets the list gets 0.22%, which is 100 million shillings, which goes to the People's Progressive Party, which was funded by the former Minister Jaber Bidandi Sali. But also, we know this week, the Electoral Commission released the revised roadmap for the 2026 general election. We know nominations of candidates will kick off on the 3rd of September. That is for the local government candidates. The parliamentary candidates will be nominated between the 16th to the 17th of September 2025. And then the presidential ones will take place between 2nd of October and 3rd of October, 2 days, 2nd of October and the 3rd of October, which is a Friday, the 2nd, and a Saturday, the 3rd. Campaigning will then begin in the second week of October 2025. Presidential and parliamentary elections are expected to be done on the 12th of January 2026. So we'll be running through these issues to try and understand how they are shaping up in our country. Very quickly, I'll begin with Mr. Gawaya Tegule on this issue of strikes that we're seeing all over the place. First, we have people who are protesting about corruption. We know what transpired there. Then we have the traders. Now we are hearing about the nurses. What do you think is going on? What are we missing as a country? And how do we deal with these issues that keep on coming up?
You see, Ken, I can't speak before the Lord Mayor has spoken. It's as simple as that. He's my boss in everything. I need to...
You want to yield your time to the Lord Mayor?
Yes, let him begin.
All right, let's go to...
He's a senior to me in the legal practice, senior to me in the political party, so you really cannot... the protocol would be broken. I'm going to respect protocol on this one.
Really?
Yes.
All right, let's hear from the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, what's your take on these issues? And for instance, the ones of the traders, it seems it's a recurrent issue. The one of the nurses, it's a recurrent issue. But also then we have these protests about corruption. One of the things you've been complaining about for quite some time.
Well, first of all, I must say I'm humbled by my brother's gesture here of humility. I thank you very much. And I wish we had that code of conduct in this country. Anyway, that aside, or that said, the issue you're raising is really pertinent. It's a critical one. The question of the crisis we are entrapped in right now as a country. I must say, it's a deep crisis. But we are yet to come to terms with this, especially the leadership. They are yet to come to terms. Or, conversely, they could be hiding their head in the sand. They would just want to play it calm, just like that. But it's a deep one, a deep-seated crisis. Why? We have, first of all, a depression, an economic depression, which is happening right now. Not caused by scarcity of resources, no, but misuse of resources, abuse of resources, so to speak. And it has now translated into something else, because you have a situation where the center can no longer hold, and you have a country which cannot work for all of us. Everything seems to be in total disarray. It's the reason you are getting this upsurge from all corners, from all circles. Coming to the specifics, we have one issue we have not dissected very well. In legal parlance, we call it the odious debt crisis. It's one thing we have not interrogated, critical as a country. And this is what has taken our neighbors, Kenya, on the brink of a terrible, terrible crisis, the odious debt crisis. We are borrowing heavily as a country. Unfortunately, that money is for luxuries. It's not invested in critical sectors that would bring returns, that would boost the economy, that will make our economy functional. And that is a very, very serious matter. Right now, I think we stand at 98 trillion, the debt. And you ask yourself, what is it that you are investing in? Betty Kamya tells you as the IGG, 10 trillion is stolen every year. 10 trillion. And then you get pretenders in government that they are fighting corruption. You have a debt of 98 trillion, but 10 trillion every year is stolen by those in government or those who have connection to government. We have reached an extent, Kenneth, of borrowing from commercial banks or money lenders. You can imagine how absurd the situation is, how dire the situation is, that we are now resorting to borrowing from money lenders. Now, with that kind of situation, management of the debt crisis has become a problem. It's a problem in Kenya, it's a problem in Uganda, and almost every other African country. It's a problem. It's a huge, huge problem.
Even protests in Nigeria.
It's all about that. Yes, there are protests again in Nigeria. It's about that. It's a huge, huge crisis. And we continue to borrow every other day. So when I was in Parliament, almost every day on the order paper, there would be an item, approval, or processing a loan. And the practice is still going on as we talk today. Processing a loan. Now we conduct a baseline survey, carry out an audit, a comprehensive audit, and see the returns from these debts we have contracted on a daily basis. Now, in trying to tinker with the same, in Kenya, Ruto was saying, look, we are trying now to come up with the austerity measures to be able to fix the debt. Look at our budget here. Look at our budget. A huge chunk of money in the budget is going towards servicing the debt. Not even the debt per se, not the debt repayment, but financing the meeting the interest. In the end, you are coming up with macroeconomic policies which are affecting the economy, and you are resorting to extracting this money from the business community as we talk right now. Because you have a budget of 72 trillion, and you are talking of getting 32 trillion from taxes, domestic revenue. Not from any other sector, not manufacturing sector, not from agriculture, not from anywhere else. It's coming from the business community, the biggest part of it, the biggest portion is coming from the business economy. Now, you are making, in essence, you are you are mounting all the pressure of fixing the public debt on one sector largely, the business community. And itself, it's very narrow here. It's the reason this FRC system, Museveni will always play games with he has no solution to this, by the way. That's why he's procrastinating, he's playing hide and seek, say, I will meet you, I will not meet you. Let's go to Kololo Stadium, blah, 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 and so on. He cannot fix it. There is no solution. There is no way out of this catch-22 situation. No way out of it. And the institution that would have managed the same are all in shambles. The National Chamber of Commerce. Do you know the chairperson of the National Chamber of Commerce? Who is the Minister for Trade? If you conducted the survey around, who knows the Minister for Trade and Industry? Who knows him or her? I don't know. So, they have all fizzled out of this. So now Mr. Museveni is managing it at a micro level. I want to meet you directly. I mean, the traders, rather, they're saying we want to meet the head of state. Not to meet the minister in charge of trade. Not to meet the chairperson of National Chamber of Commerce. Not to meet anybody else. Even in Abanja cannot manage. No way. The minister for Kampala, I just sympathize with her. She tried to intervene and say, please, I'll fix an appointment for you. They said, go. You get it? So it's a serious matter. It's a crisis. We are entrapped in as a country, and we appear not to be having a solution because all the institutions that will be dealing with the same are decimated. And it's only one man, General Kaguta Museveni, who has solution. And when it comes to corruption now, no, before I come to corruption, as I wind up on this particular issue.
Very quickly.
Yes. I was saying the cost of doing business in this country is very, very high. Extremely high. Look, interest rate. Mr. Museveni increased the bank rate. It's now 10.5. 10.5. It's double digit right now. During COVID, they lowered it to 6.5, the bank rate. But right now, it was as low as 6.5, 2021, 2022. Now it's 10.5. 10.5, it has caused a spiraling of the interest rate on commercial loans. And now, contracting loans is a problem. Now you are coming up with these taxes, which I don't want to mention here, a multiplicity of all those taxes and so on and so forth. Now about corruption specifically, I don't know. Mr. Museveni has postured so much about fighting corruption, claiming that actually, at one time, you remember, he organized a march against corruption here, and pretending the other day that he's going now to crack the whip by causing the arrest and prosecution of the MPs. He just got a handful. Just a handful, 1, 2, 3.
The ones where there was evidence.
You look here, the youth are saying, please, the chief culprit here, if it's corruption in the parliament, you start with number one in the parliament.
But what
is this number one?
The president has said, give him the evidence.
Or this poor man from Butareja, Mutembuli Yusuf. Honestly speaking, would you convince anyone that you are dealing with corruption, well-organized, grand corruption, and you are getting Yusuf Mutembuli?
Well, I don't want to go into the details of that.
Anyway, okay, fine, it's before court. But the issue is, I don't want also to defend them. They might be guilty or not. That's a matter to be determined by court. But the youth are saying, please, get touch, number one. What happens? Number one, the speaker. It has now become an offense, an unwritten crime. If you hold up a placard, Anita must resign, they arrest you. Actually, now I've committed an offense to say Anita must resign. Anita Among must resign. I've committed an offense. I may be arrested tomorrow. While on Radio 1 Spectrum, you said Anita must resign. It's an offense now. Everyone who comes up with that statement, Anita must resign. Yet it's a constitutional right.
Well, she says, resign for what? Resign for what?
Do you know? You get it. You get the resign for what?
Why should she
By
resign?
her own confession, Anita justified the corruption. When she went to Sise Namuju's constituents, said, stealing is okay as long as you share with your people. Can't you prosecute on that particular account, on that ground alone? Forget about what is circulating in the social media. But that statement alone coming from the Speaker of Parliament, justifying and rationalizing, glorifying corruption.
What would the offense be?
You check the penal code. It's very clear. The leadership code act. It's very clear on that. So you go there. You cannot fail to get an offense against a leader who abuses office. That's abuse of office. If I were the one in charge of the state, I would charge her with abuse of office. You are there as a speaker. Your duty number one under Article 269 of the Constitution is to defend the Constitution of Uganda. And you are telling Wananchi that, please, let us rationalize and justify corruption. Now, you bring all the troops here to defend Parliament, which you said is full of the corrupt. Have you passed Serena here? It's a garrison. Cases here is barricaded. And unfortunately, the judicial has been conscripted in this. That's where I want to wind up my point here. Mm-hmm. The judicial is conscripted into this cartel, this scheme of protecting the corrupt. I'm sorry, it's very, very unfortunate. This time around, they didn't want to take the suspects to police cells. A network was made. A chain was made between the judiciary and the police force. Actually, not police force, the security operatives, a combined force of army and police. Whoever you pick, you take to court.
Efficiency.
No, listen.
You would complain that they have held the people beyond 48 hours.
Court business ends at 5. I have people, including the Honorable Zake, who were taken to court past 5. They were arraigned before court when it was coming to 7. Now,
dedicated service.
Listen to this.
Overtime. Working overtime.
There's a law.
The law is very clear. Business ends at 5. Now, we go there, we make an application for bail. I stand as a student. The lawyer was Aaron Chiza. I come in as a student. I present my ID. Then the magistrate said, this one is not a substantive student.
It needs time to review your documents.
Why I was found
not substantive.
Not substantive. They said I did not produce an NRC letter.
All right.
But that I could not prove that I'm a resident of Kampala. That's what the judge.
Yet you're the Lord Mayor.
Yet I'm the Lord Mayor of Kampala.
Right.
And as the Lord Mayor, the magistrate asks me to go and get a letter from LC1. This is LC5.
Now, those are not the rules, Lord Mayor.
Which rules? Where is it written in the law? That if we want to stand the shooting, we must have an LC letter. Right. The national ID. The national ID. On the face of it, prima facie it's valid. Allow me just one thing. The sums they are charging, the unconscionable sums. It started with the Dr. Chizabesige, 30 million. Now with the Honorable Zake, Honorable Sejirinya and the Alan, 20 million. Now they are charging lots of money.
All right. Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for this break now. When we return, the other panelists will weigh in. We have heard from the Lord Mayor. But also, what is your view? Share with us on our WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090.
Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra live on Radio 1 FM 90. Review of the major events of the week. We are looking at the situation in our country regards the protests, strikes, and all these kind of things that are going on. Earlier on, we heard from the Lord Mayor of Kampala Erias Lukwago. Also in studio is Ms. Perry Aritua, Councillor Thomas Gawaya Tegule, and Dr. James Tweheo. Now, let me come to you, Ms. Perry Aritua. We've heard from the Lord Mayor. What's your take on this situation? Some people say it's a crisis of priorities, it's failure to use resources well. What exactly are we dealing with, given the situation that we have now?
Greed. That is partly what we are dealing with. Greed, but also part of it is leaders who don't care about people. Because why would citizens pay taxes and you decide you want to use them for your own ends and not meet your obligations as enshrined in the Constitution? So the strikes are going on, one, because of corruption. That's why it's unfortunate that we still have, I think there are about 46 or 49 young people who are still in Luzira for exercising their constitutional rights in Article 29 to peacefully demonstrate. And by the way, within our constitution, I think it's objective. I should get the exact objective. One of the national objectives and directive principles of state policy says that it's actually a duty of a citizen to expose the corrupt. Corruption. Yes, to expose, but also fight. So these young people were exercising their right, partly because they were not seeing the real actions being taken against the corrupt. And you see, the Lord Mayor mentioned the statement by the speaker in Luengo. Many of us were annoyed, I can tell you. Where you listen to a leader saying it is okay to steal as long as you share the crumbs with
these people. and say, I would have done this, but I'm unable for reasons which are justifiable. Because you may give reasons that people say, for example, we are talking about the luxury life of some of our people. You'll find an MP, not even a minister, moving with 3 vehicles, one lead vehicle, the other one behind. What is that cost? With 8 officers who are entitled to an allowance and all of that. We discussed some of those issues by the way in Chankwanzi.
And you want to say your leaders are not saying that?
No. I'm not. Am I not a leader? Why am I saying it? I'm saying it here on the public radio. So, do you think I'm not a leader? So, some of these things we fight within ourselves to solve them.
You discussed in Chankwanzi?
Yes, we did. We did. There is no reason whatsoever why some of our people, and by the way, some have even engaged their own private money. Somebody goes and buys his own pickup, stations it as if it is a lead vehicle, and puts even an alarm and puts even lights. You can even see the confusion in Kampala quite often. Road mayor is passing this direction. Yeah, because you are the road member. You see.
The word Kampala is synonymous.
Congratulations, why you're facing me?
Kampala is a city presided over by the road mayor. And by the way, you have tried. I should say it. You have tried. Even though, of course, there are gaps and issues, but you have tried. So
the word Lord Mayor is becoming part of his name. Yeah, some people will say President Museveni. Yeah. That's it.
We used to have a gentleman, an officer in our place, who stayed at the rank of major for so long that even up to today, when he is a general, they call him major. Say, you are going to major's place. So the same thing with our own mayor. So some of these issues, the total confusion that comes in, is also facilitated by both those in position and those not in position. And by the way, let me tell you this. Most beneficiaries of corruption are the givers, not even those given. Because they give with the interest of benefiting. And this is what happens. So we need to look at all ends. For example, me, I am not a proponent of the construction of hospitals and health centers and all that. I'm not. No, I've never been and I will not be. And I can say it firmly. If our people are to survive and survive well, we should have put more attention on PHC, primary health care. Why do you want people to come to hospital when they are sick? Why don't you put preventive measures? And by the way, if you didn't know, we have a state minister in charge of primary health care. But you tend to hear every constituency you go to, every sub-county you go to, they play, whether it's a member of parliament, whether it is a reverend, whether it is a priest, whether it is a sheikh, their prayer, Your Excellency, or whoever, we want a health center built here. What does that tell you? That our focus have really been deflected to a certain direction that we tend to think in the reverse in some cases. How do you say my interest is to service the dead body instead of my interest being to prevent somebody from dying? Let's look at things realistically. So in my view, some of the issues that these strikers look at are the luxury lives and the arrogance, I must use that word, the arrogance of some of us who are either positioned or advantaged, and who should have used our advantaged positions to service and help the people, putting it to ourselves for the others to see in amazement and wonder whether we shall ever think about them. So, in this situation, this is what we need to look at. We must consider those elements. Right. And we need to rethink our position. And by the way, unfortunately, even at a time when you think somebody is coming up, you will see Katonga coming up, you will see Noop coming up, even when they seem to be coming up, and you say perhaps one of these could be reasonable, they become worse than ourselves. So you say, now in this situation, what do we do? You say President Museveni doesn't fight corruption. He tries his best in all circumstances. However, those who frustrate him are not only the givers, but some of the recipients. And by the way, I don't know, you can even ask the road mayor. Don't be surprised if the road mayor has ever had somebody eating a bribe in his name. When he's not aware, when he's,
Let me ask you.
Yes.
What action did he take against the Mabati thieves, especially those in the cabinet?
I thought there are some people in court.
No. I'm talking about the Prime Minister, I'm talking Vice President,
the microphone
my friend,
Mr. Gawatebule.
I want to believe that you always believe in justice.
All right, Mr.
And
Gawatebule,
jurisprudence.
your take on this situation.
Just a moment.
Very quickly.
And therefore, it is very, very unprofessional or even unethical to condemn somebody without subjecting that person to the justice.
He should convict them. I said prosecuting them. That's what I said.
But before you prosecute, you first get facts.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Gawatebule. Your take on this issue.
Well, Ken, generally, I think people need to know that this country is not getting better. I think things are generally getting worse. You want to look... people talk a lot about the statistics and stuff like that. I like to step aside, to distinguish clearly between quantitative economics and qualitative economics. And that a lot of the time, Mr. Museveni discusses the quantities. He likes quoting figures and then saying, before we came to power, this was what was happening. Now that we're here, this was what happening. But, quantities always lie because statisticians usually go by the law of averages. Getting a GDP, you divide the gross production by the population, and then you get a gross domestic product. Now, it does not necessarily take into account who has what, and that's where we go wrong. One has to look at the quality of life across the board. Is the money, there's more money in the economy, that is true, but who has this money? Where is it going? In whose hands is it? What kind of life are people leading? I had the opportunity today to visit for the first time the hospital that was never built in Lubowa, having taken 379 billion. Now I hear Mr. Museveni grandstanding about foreigners, sijui wanatuletea nini, they bring all these mandamanos on the streets, and therefore, this foreign influence, I would have joined the protest, but you'll see these are things that are being funded by foreigners. And I'll say, yes, we know who is dealing with foreigners in this country. We know who is welcoming foreigners in this country to take what belongs to Ugandans. We know who Pineti is. We see Lubowa Hospital, or what is not there of Lubowa Hospital. We see money of the taxpayer stolen from under our eyes. And Mr. Museveni is discussing foreigners. Mr. Museveni, who is dealing with foreigners to steal public funds, is accusing the young people who are even poor and have nothing of being under foreign influence.
For the record, foreigners are investors in this case.
Is Pineti an investor?
Yeah, a very big one.
How much did she bring to the economy? James, let's now be serious. Let's talk like adults. How much did Pineti bring to this economy? Apart from being a comprador who is being used to siphon money from the public coffers to private hands.
Which Pineti are you talking about? We have now heard that there's a black Pineti. There's a black Pineti.
You see, for us, we want accountability. So when Dr. Tweheo says Museveni is fighting corruption, I really shudder. I said, Mr. Museveni is at the heart of corruption. You're welcoming Pineti and protecting her. You're giving her protection as she's being used as a conduit to steal public funds.
The president said the fight against corruption is in his hands. Give him the evidence.
The source of corruption is in his hands. I have the evidence. So I think we need to discuss this thing holistically and look Mr. Museveni in the eye and say, you are the cause of all these problems. You're working with foreigners to take public funds.
You need to get facts.
No.
He's an investor.
Let me tell you.
You're only looking at one of his investments.
There is nothing to inform. I'm well informed. Kenneth, I'm a journalist. I can guarantee you I'm well informed on these matters.
Right,
I can tell you that Mr. Kananathan, who was, you remember the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act? You remember the coffee marketing board premises at whatever? You remember how Mr. Museveni brought this Mr. Kananathan to ostensibly fuel the AGOA program? And where did we go? How much money was sunk into that project? This is public funds. Kananathan did not come with money to this economy. He came to get money from this economy.
He came with ideas, which you didn't have.
Who of us doesn't have ideas here? Can Arias here not have ideas? Can James not have ideas? Okay, James, of course, now working with his father in the heart. But, I mean, so if he had the ideas, would keep quiet. But for me, the issue is, I think we need to be serious. Mr. Museveni is not telling us the truth. You see, and the problem is, all that Mr. Museveni wants is to stay in power. So things like fighting corruption do not really feature anywhere on his agenda. Let us forget about this grandstanding, this political posturing about you're capturing, you're arresting this one, that one. He's not interested. And for me, that is what pains me. So when people are on the street demonstrating, I think the state has a duty to come out and say, guys, what are your concerns? Can we talk? Can we listen to you? Let us address them. You see what Ruto did? He said, okay, guys, you're raising issues. Fine. I'm listening. I'm going to address the issues. You think there should be no First Lady's office and whatever. I'm putting this aside. All the money that has been going there, I'm putting it back. I mean, that is a president who is listening. Because saying people, okay, there's no office of First Lady or Second Lady.
What about a president who says,
whatever.
Traders, go back to work, I'm going to meet you? Isn't he listening?
You see, like my senior already spoke on that matter. He said the president is really trying to circumvent the real issues. He's afraid to meet the traders because he has no answers to the questions that they're posing. And for me, as a country, we need to look to say one thing. Mr. Museveni has done this country no justice. He has done more harm than good. He has basically upset the order that was there before he came. A lot of things have gone down, and all he's doing is please himself, keep himself in power, pamper those who are in his family, and those like my brother James Tuaheo here who agree with him. So James, congratulations! You're eating well. You're eating big. I am happy for you. But for me, I think that the national cake should be distributed in an equitable manner.
Redistributed.
Okay, yes. Now, there's a question of distribution and redistribution. I think that there's too much money in too few hands. Those are the critical issues that are facing this country. There is too much latitude to a small predatory elite to do anything that they want. And for me, this is where the country should focus and say, where are we headed? Because Mr. Museveni tomorrow, atakuwa amekufa. I mean, he's 80, for heaven's sake, he's not getting younger. And what happens to the country when he is gone? Those are the questions we must face. The James Tuheos here who are close to the big man should be telling him, looking him in the eye and telling Mzee, kesho hautakuwapo. You will be gone. So what happens? What happens to the country that you have you basically organized around yourself? For me, that is what we have. No state as things stand. We have no government. If you abolished government, if you abolished the cabinet today and you abolished parliament, nothing in this country would change. I guarantee you. That is how far things have gone. Because one man, it's a one-man show basically.
As we go for the break, you're wondering where the president will leave the country. But he actually told us he will be in heaven, and it will be up to you to take care of your
situation. Me also make this clear.
He actually said very soon he will be going to heaven.
Let me tell you. One more thing.
We'll hear the views of the listeners and continue with the discussion.
I'll walk out.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90, review of the major events of the week. We are looking at what's a newspaper called A Country of Strikes, looking at the situation that we have gone through the whole of this week as we looked at protests by the youth on corruption, strikes by the traders. Now we have a new emerging situation with the nurses. They were earlier today at the Ministry of Health demanding to be deployed. My guest this evening, the Honorable Arias Lukwago, the Lord Mayor of Kampala Capital City, Ms. Perry Aritua, Executive Director, Women Democracy Network, Council Gawaya Tegule, advocate and veteran journalist, Dr. James Tuaheo, member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM Party, but also senior officer in the Office of the President. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. When we were going for the break, I told Mr. Gawaya Tegule that President Yoweri Museveni said very soon he will be in heaven. And he did say that when he finds him in heaven, he will just walk away. You might actually find him in heaven, and he is your president there.
No, if I find Mr. Museveni in heaven, I'll know I'm in the wrong place. Then I'll move on and continue asking. But I'm going to heaven. Where can I find him?
That is
All
if
right.
Tegule is qualified to go to heaven.
Let's get the comments that are coming in from the listeners. Robert from Chira writes in and says, thank you, Radio 1, Spectrum Xtra, and Duquesne for the show. I'm really enjoying the show. Lord Mayor, you have really amused me that you were asked to produce LOC1 letter to be able to stand surety. Lord Mayor, I know that the court business is now not business as usual. Situations are handled as they present themselves. Just like in football game tactics, change as the opponent presents. They had to find one thing you didn't have to deny bail. Next time, try to go with all possible requirements. And thank you for the show. Why don't these lawyers take the government to court and extract reparations enough to set the brave Gen Z up for life? For the powers that be to think twice before stopping demonstrations in future. I hear Constitutional Court pronounce itself on this matter. That's a comment from James. Then we have another one. Good evening, Kenneth. I'm tuned in from Ethiopia via DSTV. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you have a DSTV connection, indeed you can get us on audio channel 897. And your comment, our politics are politics of promises. Without plans, it's a routine of speaking what people want to hear, always and finding excuses why it has not been done. Secondly, the people who vote are to blame for the challenges in Uganda. It is no longer bad leadership alone, but also bad followership. That's a comment from Innocent Opio there. I think that comment rhymes with what Ms. Peria Ritua was saying earlier on, that people can hold the leaders through the vote. Okelo Patrick Bonyo, listening in from Busega. As long as NRM is still in power, stealing resources will increase because it's risky for the NRM government to fight corruption, and the opposition will always continue to lament because some of them are beneficiaries of the loot. Let us just bear in mind that there is no freedom to demonstrate or any form of marching against bad governance in Uganda. Go knowing that you may not return home, and if you're serious, you'll get injuries. NB Ugandans are not very angry enough to change, and the change will just be inevitable. Greetings to the panelists, and please tell Lord Mayor to unite the party. Well, somebody wants you to unite the party. Then somebody
on that point, Ken, there's something I don't want us to skip.
You're going to have an
on that one,
comment
kindly.
Yes, please.
Because there is a tendency of people saying there should be political change on the basis of people just rising up. Now, I want to say one thing. I would really want Museveni to go to leave power, but not in that way. There is a danger that we must all warn ourselves against. That once there is that uprisings create power vacuums. Power vacuums create pandemonium, and they foment state collapse. We should not ask for something or wish for something which we cannot handle when it goes out of hand. Ugandans, whether you're yellow or red or blue in terms of political persuasion, we must warn ourselves on that kind of thing. We must say, let us wait for peaceful transfer of power and work towards that. Otherwise, we shall go the way of Somalia, of DRC, of Sudan and South Sudan, and we shall regret everything. And we shall wish Museveni was still in power.
All right, quickly. I really share the same view, but unfortunately, it's inevitable either way. Whether he goes through uprisings or he goes the Mugabe way. Because Mugabe had to pave way for Mnangagwa. Is Zimbabwe any different from Libya? They are all gone. So it's a very sad situation we are in right now. Either way Museveni goes, this country is doomed. Either way he goes. I'm telling you, longevity kills everything. Mugabe, no, you said, I've told you, I mean, Ben Ali in Tunisia, it was uprising. Libya, uprising. Egypt, uprising. Sudan, uprising. But now you come to Zimbabwe. It was not uprising. They had to push away the Mzee. What happened? Get another case study. Kenya itself, after Moi, it will take long for them also to settle down. They are trying now to maneuver around to have some kind of handshake here and there. But the anger, the deep-seated anger of certain people against a particular eating class, it's terrible. Today, Look at what the Jaluos feel like against the Kalenjin. It's terrible. And it is the same situation here. Even if Museveni left by peaceful means, this deep-state anger, I'm telling you, it's too much. I was looking at a statement Alaka made, my brother Kalebu Alaka. It was a loaded statement about extending the power line to Western Nile, putting Western Nile on the national grid. He said, Western Nile was annexed to Uganda in 1914. Since then, we have not been part of this country. Since then, we have not been part of this country.
Now power has been extended there.
After how many years?
After how many years?
During the reign of President Museveni.
So,
after which year of President Museveni?
No.
The guy has been here 40 years, and then you're saying,
absolutely.
After 38 years, you're saying he has
But Western Nile was annexed in 19
so
what?
there is an
More than 100
implosion.
years ago.
Yes, absolutely. So what was happening 100 years before?
And
Okay,
they even had the son of the soil in power.
Absolutely.
What does that tell you?
So-
But wait, I am from Western Nile. We used to have power. We used to have power before it was even before when Reko. You know, there was power. I was really young, but the power was constant. It was not to the national grid, but there was constant power. At least that's what I remember. But when Reko came, we went into disarray. And that's why the anger of not being on the national grid for so many years is because
when we had UEB, you had power. Then the divestiture.
No,
divestiture
we
is what
still
brought
used
in
to
Wenreko.
get. It was almost like thermal, and then after that they brought in Wenreko, which has been a disaster for over 20 years.
So you should thank the government for extending.
No, you know why? You know why the people can't thank the government? Because they have paid taxes in this country for over I don't know how many years.
Because you don't thank the ATM for giving you money.
Because it's their duty to supply that
Let's
power.
be realistic. For the first time in the history of West Nile,
And by the way, these are
There
deep,
is an extension.
these are deep things. There are
Yes,
certain
that's
parts
the
of this
truth.
country
Let's look
that
at the
feel they have
reality.
been intentionally left behind.
no, let's look at the reality.
There's no
For
equitable
the first time in
development.
the history of West Nile, they have got also a 132 kV line that reaches West Nile. For the first time in the life history of Uganda, in Karamoja, they have got that extension of the power line. That is why, and actually we should let's look at it. That is why initially all industries were in Jinja. Jinja was called the industrial city, not even the city industrial hub of Uganda. Reason? Because power was simply generated there.
No, there were industries there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's
There
why
were
it was an
industries
industrial city because
Not because of power.
No.
They were in industries.
because the
in
production
Jinja.
cost, because of the electricity and the extension of power was the source of power near Jinja. Now, you
Power
can
was
put an industry.
enabler. Power
Yes,
was
well,
an enabler.
it is true. Today you can put an industry in West Nile and you can use the very extended power of the 132 kV to run any industry. Today, there are 3 cement industries coming up in Moroto that are going to use this power. Today, there is a road that extends from here.
So you understand government?
Today, yes.
For having done it
Let's look at the mathematics here. Uganda has been independent
Okay, let's thank ourselves for having generated enough funds
Yes, Tegule.
to manage
Uganda has been independent for 62 years.
that. Correct.
Right? 62. Am I correct? 6
Almost
years.
1962.
60 years. 62, 62
you're
years,
actually
right?
right.
You are correct.
Of those 60 in power because Mr. Museveni was on the other side busy fighting them.
No, but he was equally fought
So
by the
what he
Konyi,
calls
by the
stability-
Lagunas. So if he was able,
Kidogo.
yes.
What he calls stability is that the one who was disturbing is now in charge, so there's no one else to disturb.
All right.
So he has had 38 years to do to be in power. So there's nothing to celebrate. I mean, if West Nile is getting power in his 38th year,
And after a lot, by the way, after a
That's
lot
ridiculous.
of pressure,
After a lot of
after a
pressure,
lot of
but
deaths,
let's
because
look at the
remember the
Is there
national, the
power or
referral
there's no power in
hospital.
West Nile?
No, the referral hospital where most people go to in the West Nile region, once there would be no power, mothers would die. It has taken a lot of advocacy. I don't know whether you remember the Christina Bias, the honorables. I mean, those were issues the Honorable Wadris would constant. So for West Nile, they can't even say we are grateful because they have been paying taxes. They have been paying taxes.
James, you should be ashamed.
They have been paying taxes.
You and the movement should be ashamed.
Let's give credit.
It has taken 38 years for
to
West
get
Nile.
equity.
Let's hear him out. Let's hear him out.
James,
At one
on that
point-
one, I totally
at one
disagree
point, the life
because
of
I'm a
everybody
daughter of
here.
the soil
There was
and we
a
have
point-
seen the effects of lack of power for all these years.
There was a point where we had blackouts and power load shedding. It was known by everybody.
And who was president
The
at the
Honorable
time?
Kwago then was in Parliament at the time. And it is factual.
So you want to blame Ulukwago?
No, I'm not blaming Kwago as an individual. Neither am I blaming the President Museveni. You know, situations reach a point where things had reached the lapse, and then they had to be revamped. Today, there is power in West Nile.
All right, we need to move on.
You know what? Let's just
move on.
You have an incompetent government
So I don't want
that takes
anybody
38
to
years
speak.
to take power to a small area of
look at
the
the
country,
reality.
and then they want us to thank them.
Right.
We shall not thank
paying taxes
Yes.
for all these years.
We shall not thank the ATM for giving us our money when we put our card in. We cannot do that.
Well, Mr. Tegule, there's an opportunity for you to actually work for the change that you want in 2026. And that's where we're going. We are going to discuss the road to the 2026 general elections. We know the EC has issued a roadmap. We know also there have been issues about political parties and how they can participate well in the election process. They're being given money from taxpayers. We have seen some issues around accountability, but also complaints about the formula through which they share remains also a very important issue. And I will start this discussion with the Honorable Erias Lukwago. Your take on these developments on the political scene, political party financing, but also the issue of the 2026 general elections.
You will spare me talk about 2026 general elections because they don't mean anything to us, especially in terms of regime change.
What you wanted to say, because you'll be a candidate.
Not really.
There's actually somebody who has sent in a message here about your candidate. I will be reading it for you. I left it purposely for this segment.
Because I supported him to be the mayor of Kampala.
All of
But
you
vote in Kampala.
No, I don't vote there.
All right, let's allow him.
I may influence the voting.
All right, let's allow
Because I
him.
have relatives like Perry and others in Kampala who can vote.
Or you can ferry voters.
No.
All right, let's hear from the Lord Mayor.
If they are in favor of the Lord Mayor, as always been.
All right, let's hear from the Lord
Time and
Mayor.
again we have said we do not have a functional multi-party democracy in this country. It's not there. Let us not deceive ourselves. We have a military rule. We have a personal rule in place. And it's the reason we can't even talk about party financing. If I had an opportunity of pushing for its scrapping, I would be glad to seize it. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't.
It doesn't at all, because you cannot finance parties and then you restrict their movements. You cannot finance parties and you can't allow them to operate. Right now, as FDC, as we talk today, the party is in shambles, it's in total disarray, and where actually we had retreated to reorganize ourselves at Katonga, there is a bombshell. 36 of our colleagues who were sent to Nairobi for Kisumu for training. They pass through the borders. You pick them, you grab them, literally grab them. I'm sure you have seen that statement issued by the Governor Kisumu, His Excellency Nyanga Nyong'o, explaining everything, violating international law, violating all the laws regarding protection of the borders and so on. So you get forces from Uganda, they invade them in their rooms, in a hotel. It was a Catholic center.
Yes, we need to file a case. I think there's somebody that should go in the East African Court on a matter like this. Because this one has implications for international law, for regional cooperation.
Well, the government of
and
Uganda
for
said
sheer decency.
these people were returned here through cooperation with the Kenyan government.
Which
They were
is all
actually
wrong.
alerted. They were actually alerted by Kenyan security about their presence there.
Anyway, this is what I was saying. I brought up that issue as a matter of example. But there are so many incidents I can cite. Right now, no single party in opposition can be allowed to crisscross the entire country to do mobilization. NOP is restricted at its headquarters. Others have been conscripted into NRM. How can you give DP and yet it is in? Do not have multi-party democracy. When I was in Parliament at that time, we tried our best to put in place certain mechanisms that would guarantee the functionality of political parties. Because of the selfishness of the Tweheyos here, I'm talking about your party. Now speaking about even the quantum, the amount of money. They said, because they just wanted to use this as a scheme to finance the NRM activities. Actually, Mr. Museveni's political agenda, not even NRM as a party, because that party is also dead. NRM is equally dead.
Oh, it is very much alive.
Forget.
Sure?
It ended with Mbabazi when he was Secretary General. It's not there. It's no longer a political party.
It is running.
Forget about that. I'll not waste my time on that. NRM is equally dead. It cannot function. So you can only summon SEC members and give them directives at State House. So
maybe there's where dead political parties meet, and Honorable Rias Lukwago has been in that corridor. He has seen NRM around there.
No, he has admitted that he's not as functional as it would be, but I
anyway,
can guarantee
if
you,
I could be allowed to develop my point,
please
because
proceed.
I wanted to complete it. I was saying, even that small thing they couldn't budge, they couldn't yield the space. Because we were discussing the formula in Parliament at that time, and said, let us be fair. This is a nascent democracy. We need to nurture these institutions. They need to be funded. We thought this time round they would hide their greed. No way. Brazenly they came out and said, we are going to have a lion's share of this money. Right now they are taking... No!
according to the law that you yourself...
I was there when the law was being made.
Yes.
I was there.
What was it?
Listen, we brought a problem. I was the Shadat Attorney General. We had iPod.
That's true.
And we prepared the bill for this particular money.
Yes.
For the sharing of this money.
Exactly. The same percentage.
Look at the original bill. No way.
Let's
Please,
allow
if you could allow
him
me
to conclude, so that you have an
Dr.
opportunity to
Kukanga
rebut.
Semogere wrote a good book if you had opportunity to look at it, the checklist on financing political parties. But you could not listen. The formula we suggested was very simple. Let's get the first 50% of the money, share it pari passu. We call it pari passu in law, in equal measure. Equally, you share it equally, the 50%. Then the other 50%, you take it on proportional basis, numerical strength. That's where you would consider numerical strength. They said, no way. Now, why it has become a joke, they are taking 75.9, roughly 76%. You leave all the other political parties with only 24%.
That's the truth.
If it is 45 billion, because according to
44.9 billion.
Roughly 45 billion.
All right.
45 billion.
You round off.
Then, yes, NRM is taking 35 billion. So, isn't that NRM fund? This is a fund for NRM. The rest are just getting crumbs. And mark you, they have already gotten access in an unorthodox way to the national coffers. So
So you disagree with the formula, but you picked the money as political parties.
We rejected the bill, rather the act. And when we went into iPod, we thought, because it was part of the iPod arrangement, we initiated it when we were in Uganda. And when we came up with that arrangement, we thought at least we do get some small space within that framework of iPod, which we started. We realized this was also another scheme to massage the dictatorship. So we had to walked out of iPod. We walked out of it. FDC, by then I was still in DP. Subsequently, FDC walked away. NOP has never joined iPod. So now you ask who is a member of iPod, and it's the mechanism they are using to agree on how this money should be shared. And for me, as I said that on the outset, whether now, actually my position has changed since then, whether shared equally, whether shared pari passu, whether proportional representation or numerical strength, this money means nothing. It's total crap. It should be scrapped, because Once you do not have a functional multi-party democracy, what are you financing? Otherwise, you would be giving individuals money, like for our case, it's just free money for those who are in Najana Kumbi. What is it that they are doing?
In other words, they're giving political party money, but they're not allowing them to actually do what they're supposed to do. Is that what you're saying?
You bring
no functional.
You bring POMA, the political, whatever, that law, to restrict the functioning of parties.
And then you give them money.
Taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money. For what purpose?
And some parties are failing.
You don't allow parties to grow. You do not allow them to do the ordinary things they ought to do under the law, under normal circumstances. They cannot even open up branches. They can't operate normally. So we are in an abnormal situation, and then you finance them to do what?
All right.
Now I was wondering, the Auditor General, what are you auditing? Briefcase organizations? What are you auditing?
Well, we have political parties that have headquarters. Najana Nkumbi, we have NUP here, we have UPC, we have DP. They all have headquarters. Even NRM at Chadondo Road.
What are they doing?
Have secretariats.
What are they doing?
For instance,
how many have registered members, have gone out to register members? How many can hold the rallies? How many of them can influence government policy right now through mobilization? Because that is a legitimate activity of a political party.
Well, FDC has
been a legitimate one. Mobilizing people to influence public policy.
FDC has been effective. It has registered members twice, Katonga and Najana Nkumbi.
Members?
You've been registering members. Let's hear from Perry. Perry, if you can come in.
In terms of this issue of
political parties and the roadmap to 2026 general elections.
Elias makes important points because if political parties are to function, the context also must be conducive. Because in law there are certain things that political parties do throughout. Identifying people who can stand for leadership, even not yet even general elections, but within the party, grooming leaders, reaching out to voters, educating voters. And civic education is part of what political parties should do. In Parliament, of course, they're supposed to check government, work with citizens to influence policy. So there are a number of things that they should be doing throughout. That's why ideally they should have strategic plans. And those strategic plans should then be what they use when they get money. But if you have money and you cannot implement the plan that you have, then you're caught between a rock and a hard place. And that's why he raises an important question. What do you audit if the money that you're supposed to use to do things with, it's almost like you cannot do those things because of the context, So those are valid points. And I think for me it is to the disadvantage of the young people because we are a young population. And what parties ideally do is to prepare young people for leadership, that when they become members of parliament, local councils, they will know what to do because they're supposed to be a training ground for these young people. So it's a disadvantage. At times I think the powers that be don't look at it like that, but ideally that's what it should be. Because when you go to different countries where parties are free to operate within the confines of the law, you can see even little, these school children get interested in party work. So by the time they get into leadership, they understand what internal democracy is because they have seen it work. But now if you have not seen how democracy should work, that if, Kenneth, you have a contrary point of view, I should not box you. Instead, I should give you my alternative. We should be able to listen. I should not arrest you because you belong to an opposition party. Because constitutionally, you have a right to associate, that you should be able to go out and speak to voters. Those are normal things in other countries. Now, for Uganda, it is even shocking when you're able to organize a meeting and it is not stopped. I think about 4 or maybe 3 months ago, UPC was having an event, I think, in Kitgum. And they had a peaceful demonstration. Then NUP, I don't know, was in which area. And there was a lot of clampdown. So for a young person, it doesn't make sense because then you're not teaching them what democracy should be. And I think that for me is my sadness as a person in 40s right now. Right. Because you have these young people who don't actually understand how this thing should work. And yet you expect to leave this country to them. They are not allowed to associate. Perry is in her 40s.
You're kidding me.
Oh, yes. I just have good genes.
I thought you liked
No.
I was just 1 year ahead of her.
Exactly.
In the law school.
You're kidding me.
And I'm 54 years. So actually, she should be in her 50s.
No. I'm in my 40s. You joined law school when you were older. No, we have looked after ourselves very well. But that's beside the point. The point I'm making is we must model behavior for democracy to work. That it should be okay for a young person to disagree and understand that nothing will happen to them.
Right.
And you see, for us who work with these young people, the fear that you see at times when you're telling them that you're a young woman, you must be able to contest. They are telling you, but how will I deal with the tear gas? How will I deal with the violence? So my sadness is, what kind of country are we living if we do not allow these principles to function? Because we are going to phase out.
All right. What's the story with you? You've seen the roadmap of the Electoral Commission. You as a seasoned electoral observer, what's your take on that? Take us to the break.
Of course, these are what I call their ratios. Like every 5 years, these things happen. For me, my concern is what will be different. Because 2021 had a number of issues. Many of us who had accreditation were actually denied an opportunity to observe the election. Now, if you have those issues that happened in 2021 not addressed, what kind of election are we preparing for? High-ended violence. You have young people, some of them are still in prison up to today, and you're telling young people you must participate. It just doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying. That as we prepare for these elections, I think the focus should be what went wrong, how can we address it as we move? Because this country is young, so you want them to participate, but how do they participate in a context that is very violent, that denies them an opportunity to associate, to assemble with the party that they feel is their choice? Those for me should be the questions that we should be answering.
Spectrum X on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll sum up this discussion. We need to hear from Dr. James Tweheyo, but also from Gawaya Tegule on this issue of the 2026 general election and the funding of political party. But we also have comments that are that I'll read out as we sum up the discussion. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break.
Spectrum Xtra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Xtra Mix on Radio 1 FM 90, review of the major events of the week. We are now looking at political party funding and the 2026 general elections. The roadmap by the Electoral Commission is out. Voting for president and MPs will be on the 12th of January 2026. So how are we preparing for that? Political parties are very important tools. They need to be funded well to be able to find candidates, set up offices, but also finance their nominations and facilitate a number of operations. My guest this evening, the Lord Mayor of Kampala Areas, Lukwago, Ms. Perry Aritu, Executive Director, Women Democracy Network, seasoned journalist, Gawaya Tegule, and Dr. James Tweheyo, member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM. Dr. James Tweheyo, this issue of political party funding and how they participate in elections, very quickly.
The political party funding is dependent on the law that was put in place. And they had a good discussion at the time of the Honorable Mbabazi. At the time, the Ken Richamzi was part of it. At the times, my brother, the Lord Mayor, was part of it. They had a good engagement, and they put a law.
They agreed to disagree.
That is still the very law that is being followed for the distribution of the money. Possibly, when they put it in place, they didn't envisage that there would be
the house. It was his daughter.
Yeah, Susan.
No. He was not the house, but he was part of IPOD.
Oh, IPOD?
Oh, yes, of IPOD. So, at the end of the day, when they looked at it, they thought perhaps the figure would constantly remain the little that they were getting as parties. And they didn't envisage that if they increase the amount and the percentage remained the same, those in parliament, according to the proportion, who are bigger like NRM is, would get a colossal sum. So that is where now the problem begins. If, for example, at the time there was the FDC with the biggest opposition team, they were getting reasonable money. But when they were overtaken in terms of numbers by NUP, it became a problem. So now you can see the challenges that come with the laws that maybe need adjustment or amendments as we move forward. So apparently, the distribution is within the framework of the law. If today, the FDC Katonga or FDC, the other place, moved in, yes, and got 200 MPs, you would not believe the amount, the share they would get. So I don't think...
And what we're saying is that fair?
Yes.
Does that bring equity, leveled playground?
I don't think you should blame the mirror when your face is lopsided. The issue is...
Well, the mirror might be slanted.
Maybe the mirror is fake.
All of them agreed.
No, that's not correct.
At the time.
I'm here. I told you. By that time, I was the National Legal Advisor.
So how did the law...
I was a Shadow Attorney General. Listen, initially, we wanted actually that amount to be shared, so I've told you, equally.
That was initially.
Initially, you rejected. Subsequently, we adjusted and said, okay, fine, let's get 1/2 of the money, share it equally, then the other half, numerical strength. You rejected that as well.
Yes, and how did the law come to place?
Don't put it to us that we are the ones who agreed to the formula.
But the law was passed by the
No, we never agreed to that formula. You have the numbers, yes. The forest of hands had the way that...
The law was passed.
Actually, they are.
And possibly, to use a better word, it is taken by the tyranny of numbers. That's the honest truth. So anyway, that's the fact. The second issue is, when we look at the politics at the moment and the conduct of people, she was saying UPC had a very good demonstration of peaceful whatever. Yeah. Even the other day, by the way, our NUP brothers were in Tungamo, and I think they were uninterrupted.
That should be the
They went to Sinjiro. They were equally interrupted. But you know, at times, they are surprised. They surprise themselves when they are not interrupted and want to put some deviant conduct so that they are interrupted. Because when you are within the framework of the law, you really have no challenges. But when you now want to be deviant so that you are interrupted and you gain...
But even FDC Naja, when they were in Ubongi, they had to negotiate with police for hours, yet they had informed the police.
It is not a question of negotiating, it is the conduct. Because if they agree, if we agree, for example, that we come to this room and we discuss from here, and for you say, me, I'm not coming to this room, I'm going to keep in the sitting room but make a noise.
But
for those who are doing the job,
you know that's not always true.
It should be handled.
That's not always true.
Let him not vulgarize it.
I'm not vulgarizing anything.
No, you're just vulgarizing it.
But the fact is, we should make sure that each one of us, or any member of a different party, or any party itself, should have peaceful assembly, should be able to mobilize its own people, should be able to, to participate in all other activities. And by the way, most of these parties have been a very good breeding ground for NRM. Our speaker was part of FDC. He was bred by you.
The speaker.
Our deputy speaker was equally that. The Lord Mayor of Kampala, who is leading Kampala, was a product of DP. And now is a very good leader in FDC. So we should look at all those. A number of DP people, at the time they used to call them Munkoba Zambogo and others. They bred good leaders. And by the way, the program of training the youth, especially in understanding politics, is still ongoing by iPod. The other day I was talking to the youth in Karangara. I spent there nights.
He has not committed the arrest of our leaders who were sent for training.
The arrest of the leaders.
Yes, they went for training in Kisumu.
In the short run, I'm not wait a minute. I'm not competent at the moment to talk about them because I need to understand, first of all, how did they go? Where did they reach? How were they received? By who? Even the other day, you can see our senior leaders went to Zimbabwe and could not be received. You get that? So it
not Zimbabwe.
They were to
Namibia.
To Namibia. They could not be received because of the mode in which you go. Sincerely, once you are traveling and you are going somewhere, whether in a different country or in the same country, you should expect, or you should reach there and ask the direction and you are guided.
Free movement of persons under the East
but they were
African
cleared by
Protocol.
the immigration.
Yes.
Their passports
They may
stamped.
have been cleared, they may have moved across, but at the end of the day, when you reach, I don't think it is Uganda which went there to pick them. They were guided.
Oh,
No,
look at the statement
I'm
Nyanga
telling
Nyong'o
you,
issued. The
we
governor of
were
Kisumu.
guided. They were in Kisumu.
Yes,
we
the
were
troops
guided.
came right from Uganda.
We were guided by the Kisumu, by the Kenyan government, that there are people here. We have received them, but we seem not to understand.
But earlier
what sort of
you
feeling and all
said
that.
you could not comment because you didn't know the
Yes,
circumstances.
so at the end of the day,
So now-
you must give them a chance because they're in the hands of government. Government has not denied receiving these people.
All right.
You have taken trouble, and I want to thank you for giving them legal support. Let's give them a chance to explain themselves and have their freedom, as the case may be, or be prosecuted within the framework of the law.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Gawaya Tegule. Your take on this.
No, Article 75 of the Constitution says Parliament shall have no power to enact a law establishing a one-party state. That is what the Constitution says. Now, we need to interrogate this article very closely, because for all intents and purposes, the way that the state functions, the way that government runs this country, is that it has established a one-party state. Now, you can navigate these things in a very smart way and allow this, allow that to window dress, to give appearances of a civilized democracy. But the truth is that we are running a one-party state. So you can have political parties for all you care, and they will not be able to function at all because they're denied state funding, they're denied the right to associate, they're denied the right to operate. So I think as a country we need to have dialogue with first of all with our conscience as individuals, but also as a country. We need to sit down and say, guys, where are we going? Because if you're allowing multi-parties or multi-party democracy, then at the same time, the conditions that are prevailing should be such that they allow parties to operate. Parties are supposed to grow, for heaven's sake. Parties are public institutions, and that is why when anything goes wrong within a party, you apply for judicial review as a member of the party, because you're saying, I have not been heard properly, because the Constitution, both in the national objectives and directive principles of state policy, and then in the articles of the Constitution, clearly provide, the Constitution does provide that parties are public institutions. They are subject to public scrutiny. They have the right to public funding. So all the things are there in the Constitution, but we have not implemented them. So we are running a one-party state and calling it a multi-party democracy. You cannot tell me that you have 45 billion and the NRM is getting 34 or 35 billion. If we want to grow democracy, then as a country, it is incumbent upon us to say, you know what, we need to operate in such a way that parties are able to grow. And for me, I marvel at my friends in the NRM. Every time I hear them, any party, its duty is first of all to stay in power. And I say, yes, that is the reasoning of myopic people. People who are not patriotic, people who don't love their country, because anybody who loves their country must know that one party cannot be right all the time. There will come a time when another party needs to come into power. They have more ideas, they have better people, they have better place to run the country. If you don't have a country like that, then the country is essentially doomed. And for me, that is what people need to understand. If we love this country, then we must make sure that parties are allowed to grow. It is in the best interest of this country. It is the best interest of all of us that NRM grows, FDC grows, NUP grows, DP grows, whichever party there is able to grow. That is how democracy grows. If you are happy that you're monopolizing power, James, then I have a problem with you. I'm going to, with respect, question, one, your intellect, in terms of your appreciation of political, I'm trying to find the right word, your appreciation of statecraft. But also, two, I'm going to question your patriotism, that you do not love the country enough to say, you know what, sometimes there comes a time when we need to step aside and that will take over. And that is why you see stability in the real countries. One party moves out. I saw the other day the Conservatives walking out of number 10. Yes. And then immediately the Labour guys came in, and there was no incident. You see, there was no incident. Now, that is democracy. That you say, guys, we've lost the election. Okay, bye-bye, we are gone. Yes, so let's go and reorganize. That's what we want to see. But you guys want to glorify Museveni. I saw Kololo the other day. You're celebrating Musai has done this. I say, you guys, where are we going as a country? Is that our level of thinking? Can't we reason beyond that? It means as a country, we have allowed ourselves to be willfully imbecile, to be intellectually docile, and to subject the country to a capricious existence.
All right. Let's get some comments coming in. Good evening, Anderson and Spectrum Extra guests. I thank you for the informative programs. I want to believe that Mr. Museveni is a good person, but the likes of Tweheyos are the biggest liabilities of this country, who vehemently idolize the president, purposely to remain wetting their beaks at the expense of Ugandans. How can you be proud that one part of the country is getting on a national grid of power after closely 40 years out of 62 since independence? The whole of West Nile has been operating on a small power generation from River Nyagak all these years, yet they contribute to the national economy. What a shame. 2, does Mr. Tweheyo, as an educationist, know that we still have schools where pupils are studying under trees without roofs over their heads, and these are the children competing with the likes of Kampala parents, schools, among others. And they can't report to their bosses. They should stop lip service to Ugandans. That's a comment coming in from Kamugo, Fred Keta, listening again from Chira municipality. Another comment from Ejoy Job Arua Boy, who is listening in from Makerere. To me, when a car is old, it is best managed by mechanics. These strikes are clear signs that the country needs new vehicle to drive us. This government has blamed foreigners for supporting strikes, but the president complained when they supported Uganda with mosquito nets. Did the president complain when they supported Uganda with mosquito nets? He should know that the strikes have just started, if not all is addressed. Information: before when Reko, only Arua in West Nile had thermal power from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's a comment from James. Then we have another comment. Benon Fred Winamasko, my concern is on how the corrupt feel entitled simply because they have access to funds they construe to be donor money. But like I have said before, it will be our grandchildren to pay it. The moment your home is bigger than a secondary school in your neighborhood, then things do not add up. Thank you for the show, he says. Then we have another comment from Triagenda. I think it's unfair to say President Museveni found more order than now. I think credit should be given where it is deserved. If it was not him, maybe Uganda would be off the map of the world. Too much politics is dangerous. Business in Uganda is much more of a distraction to local manufacturing. They also form a mob that forces everybody to close shops without total acceptance. Excuses of not wanting to pay taxes because you are a mob is not wise. That's a comment from Turi Agenda. We have another comment here. I used to respect the Lord Mayor Arias Lukwago until the government formed KCCA, which rendered the position of Lord Mayor useless. But he keeps seeking elections to occupy a useless office. He spends all the time lamenting. That's a comment from Joe in Kamocha. Well, gentlemen, let's wind up this discussion, and I'll begin with you, the Lord Mayor. We've been reflecting on these issues, but you have also had the comments that are coming in from the listeners, your quick responses, and also your closing remarks as we draw closer to the end of this program.
That gentleman who has sent a jab,
Joe Kamocha. Joe, listening in from Kamocha.
Probably wanted me also to use the same means them 7 years to go to the bush. Because I think the situation obtaining in the country right now is pretty much the same as what happened in 1980 when Museveni said, these elections are nothing, they are useless, let me go to the bush. For us, we have been civil enough. We have been, I think, magnanimous enough to the likes of Museveni not to pick up guns, and they should give us credit. So, what he calls lamenting is continuous conscientization of the population so that you get to understand. I don't think the last 2 hours we have spent here, people have not picked 1 or 2 things from what we have discussed here. And that is my role as a leader, to keep furnishing you with information, to do its civic duties, and you get to understand this. And of course, other things like oversight. I'm not here to give accountability of what I'm doing at Stay Hall. Maybe when given an opportunity next time I will do. But now, to wrap it up, generally speaking, on the point we started with about the demonstrations, Ugandans, that's the only option we have. I'm afraid. You have issues with the uprisings, not incursions as such. I'm not an anarchist, no. Or a person who is
inciting violence,
no. But I'm invoking the provisions of Article 3 of the Constitution. Kenneth, the Constitution is very clear in Article 3, Clause 5. When you have the framers, our forefathers who made that Constitution, Museveni was also part of the team that came up with this Constitution. They brought in... He signed it. He signed it. And they incorporated within our political, from within our jurisprudence, actually, the doctrine of resistance. It's in the Constitution, resistance. Article 3. Article 3 talks about resistance. That if you are an adult of sound mind, able-bodied, it's your duty to resist all the transgressions going on in the country. And this is what we are talking about. The stealing of public funds with impunity, where no action is being taken, or where there is just posturing, grandstanding, Tebule was talking about here. You have the duty to come up and say enough is enough. And this is exactly what the youth are doing right now. What happens? You get all these troops. I was asking you, I don't know those of you who don't know what is happening. The garrison I was talking about. You pass by Stay Hall. The tension there is. But the point I wanted to end with, you see, clamping down has got a limit. Clamping down on the masses. It has got a limit. Because now it would appear Museveni has exhausted all his cards. He's left with only one thing. Handouts and subjugation by force.
All right.
But that is not sustainable in the long run.
All right. Comments coming in. Good evening, Kenneth. While the parliament is surrounded and blockaded, the leaders are in Mitoma showing off their financial power and merrymaking. It annoys to face such kind of impunity. Not that corruption now is corporate corruption.
1.7 money is
put in the budget for them to share, distribute to their cronies, so hiring political support. Look at Bulambuli in Elgon County. No roads, poor health facilities, yet the MP is in prison for cooperative money. What the hell? Bulambuli is crying because of corrupt MPs. Let's hear from you, Gawaya Tegule, as we close this discussion.
Before he comes, just a quick one. You know, he was in here in Kampala playing around with the ghetto youth. Museveni trying to appease them.
He actually met them yesterday, but one in State House.
That is giving them just 1.2 billion.
To share in their circles.
To share.
In their circles.
But do you know what it means? Giving 1.2 billion. And you give 300 to Rocco. You give all that money to Pinetti. And then you get these poor youth, 1.2 billion. They will eat it and will fight you.
All right, let's hear from Mr. Tabule.
First, let me, on the issue of the Lord Mayor standing on what they call a useless post, I want to clarify this. There are many of us who'll stick to doing what we do because we believe in the system, because we believe in systems and structures of government. And we also, not because we believe in those who are running the country. I think people need to draw a line between those two things. There are things you'll go to court because, even if you don't like the judge, but because you're a lawyer, you appear before the court because you honor the court. You say, this is a court of law, and even though I don't like the judge, I'm appearing before court because that's the right thing to do.
Including court-martial.
Yes, including court-martial. Say, this is the right thing to do. You get the point. And you also hope that once we keep these systems running, then these guys will go eventually. They'll go eventually. And then the systems will still stay, and we shall be able to have upright systems working smoothly. I think we need to draw a line. Let us not throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think that's very important. But at the same time, I also want to say one thing, that the question of demonstrations needs to be handled with care. One, people have a right to demonstrate. Peacefully, of course. But at the same time, the state has a duty to listen. And listening should not be a favor bestowed by the president. He's being magnanimous, kambayambe, and I listen to you, mulikuwa mnasema nini, and let me, okay, I'll see what I can do. I think that patronizing should stop. I was very happy when I saw people in social media rubbishing Mr. Museveni and saying, we're not your bazukulu, we are not your grandchildren, you should know who your grandchildren are and separate us from them. I was happy when I saw, I think it was Council Nicholas Opio, whom I call Sir Nicholas, who's in his tweet, he broke it down very well. He said, you see, by calling us Bazukulu, the president is altering the equation. He even said it here on the show. He said it here. Patronizing us. Yes, he's patronizing because you're changing the relationship. Because the president and citizen is one of a servant who is accountable to the people. When you say I'm your grandfather, you're my grandchildren, it means you cannot ask a question. Whatever I do, just accept because I'm your grandfather. Yes.
His eldest son, Muhoz, that is, I think, the firstborn, was born 1974. I was born 1970.
The Bazukulu are not people like you, Lord Mayor.
Who are they?
They are like the youth who are
this was here.
No, I'm not a gentleman.
You are the old folks. No, but at any rate, I think the president needs to stop patronizing and remember that, you are just a president and you're accountable to the people. For me, the thing that pains me about this government is that people think Museveni is not accountable to the people. I think I resent that and I want to resist it with all the...
According to Article 3.
Yes. You cannot claim to be above the law and above accountability. You are a president. We are the citizens. We own this country. You cannot lord it over us. And for me, I think the kids, I think the citizens should be able to stand up against this. But so when they demonstrate, let them freely demonstrate and let government listen because they have a duty to listen.
All right. We have a comment here. Another jab from Joe says, serious people resign. They don't stay in offices. They can't serve the people who elected you. That's a jab from Joe from Kamocha there who was listening to us. And then we have another
misplaced jab.
Then we have another comment from Emma in Namasuva. As a Ugandan, I take solace in the fact that at one point in time, nobody will even remember who these NRM people were and if they ever existed. And I'm going to try to mimic the person. Like General Mugisha Muntu usually says, time. Let's hear from you. It's very aritone.
And you see, this is where the principles of democracy are important, because it's important to separate the people from the issues. Because these people are Ugandans, even when you say the NRM, they are still Ugandans. And that's why I hope that the leaders listen to what the young people are saying, that we need to sit and deal with the issues that are paining these Ugandans, because they are the majority. And if there can be a win-win situation, it will be good for the country. We can learn lessons from Kenya. We don't have to actually reach that level where people die, to be able to be listened to. Because we know that if you continue to use power, there are those, oppression. People, it's like a child whom you beat every day. They get used. And when they're used to the cane, you as a parent, you've failed.
All right.
So the dialogue, having conversation, but action on the issues, I think for me is paramount.
Dr. James Tuahea, you'll have the final say.
I can't. Mr. Dialogue today is not around. So, but I also agree with him that we need to have dialogue and engage with each other, whether we agree with each other in different parties or whatever. We need to engage.
All right.
That's number one. Number two. It is also important to realize that not even the government can do everything in one go.
All right.
Considering that the resources we use are not enough, but also considering that part of the resources which should have been enough to be used is misused by those who have access to it.
Okay.
And we should not glorify that. And that right should not be delegated or relegated for others and given out to those who don't deserve it.
All right, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum
I want to
Extra.
make this clear.
Let me thank you, dear
Where
panelists.
government has a duty,
Let me thank you,
fulfill
listeners.
its obligations.
Should behave like your
We
party.
should get
From
it.
me and the people in studio is to wish you a good weekend. We are Silent Radio 1 FM 19.